Hello everyone, and welcome back to my tutorial on GenEd. In this tutorial, what I'll be doing is covering aspects of importing your height map, texturing the height map, copying the files necessary to load it into ground control so that you can actually play it. What I'll be doing here is a multiplayer map for you to use, so let's get on with it. We go to File, New, and you should now be familiar with the interface that we have here for GenEd. What we need to do first of all is to import a height map. So we're going to import height map and then go to the folder that you copied down from that zip file that I sent to you, or you should have a copy of from the zip file that you downloaded from that URL in a previous tutorial I sent. If you go into the height maps folder, there should be a map in there that we created called test height map. We click on that and open it. As you can see in this panel, there's no actual view here at all at the moment. There's no picture here. But if you look down here, you can see your imported height map. What we'll have to do is change the view on this. So if we go to the slope map view, you can now see your height map. If you check on this, you'll actually see that there's a lot of red boundaries here, which basically means that units cannot move across the map at all. That if you were to drop a drop zone in this area, they would only be able to play around in this area and nowhere else on the map. So what we're going to have to do is edit this in Photoshop or your photo editing software that you use, and we're going to have to smooth some of these or blur some of these lines so that units can actually get to other areas in the map. So what we'll do first of all is we need to save this in GenEd. But before we can do that, we need to create an environment. Just accept the generic default settings, because a lot of this we can change in the .nve file in GenEd. At this stage, if you just did that and clicked OK and tried to save it, you would get an error message pop up. Let's try and save this first of all, because this is a multiplayer map that we're creating. We need to go to Data, Multiplayer, Missions. I've already got one here called Test, but let's do another one. We'll call this Test 2 and click Save. You'll get this error message, failed to copy bump map image, which is fine. If you click OK on that, if you go back to your environment window, and down here, if you click on Import to import your bump map, unfortunately for some reason the desert bump map that you see here isn't actually in the GenEd data at all, which is rather strange, as you would think that this would be ready to go. So what we need to do is click Import and go to GenEd data, and from GenEd data there should be some bump maps there. If we select the desert bump map that I've placed and click OK, it will put that there. A good thing to do is also import the cloud map. Go contrast the bump cloud map, click OK. Don't worry about any of these settings, as we're going to change these settings in the environment file. So just for now, just click OK. And you're pretty much done. What you should also do at this stage is also set the mission parameters. So if we go into Edit, Mission, change the mission parameters to game type to multiplayer. So this is a multiplayer game. Leave the force as Craven, it doesn't really matter. Tech level, I tend to put up to 6 or 7. As we're going to make a fairly smallish map, we should reduce the maximum squads to 8. As it's 4 squads per dropship, so we can reduce the number of dropships to 2. You could keep it at 3, it just means they can use 3 dropships, but with 8 units, there's no point. Maximum players, again, how many teams there are? 2. We tend to disable the aircraft, as we don't play with aerodynes at all, really, only on some maps. So if we edit the session configuration, Go in here, set the time limit. 20 minutes is normally good for a multiplayer game. Score limit we don't set unless you decide to set this as a score limit game only. Reinforcements is always switched off. The only time we have reinforcements switched on is when we're playing base assault maps. And again, the interval can be set here. APC mode is always set to not vital. The only time we actually set APC mode to vital is it becomes almost like in the single player game. If your APC die, your whole unit and squads die, and so you basically die on the battlefield. Friendly fire is always on. Damage factor is normal. Click OK. Double check the settings one more time. Happy with that. Click OK. And what I suggest you do and get used to doing is save. Every time you make any changes to this, always do a save. Okay, what we need to do is basically alter this in Photoshop so that units can actually access certain areas of the map. And what we're going to do here is to limit the map size, because at the moment this is on full aspect ratio. So if we go into play field, and using the number minus key, press the minus key, and as you can see, the actual green square reduces in size. To grab this, grab the corner with the left mouse button, while holding the left mouse button down, just move this across. I think I need to reduce this some more. That looks about right. Aspect ratio to 400. This should be okay. Let's save that again. Save, yes. Okay, we can now come out of GenEd. We need to open up our Adobe or your Photoshop editing tool. File, open, and in here, if you go locate your actual map, which is in our case test 2, you need the height map, which is here. Open this, and you basically have your map here. The area that we're working on is roughly this area. So what we can do is, within Photoshop, if you just bear with me 1 second, I just need to okay. If you remember in GenEd, all these areas were inaccessible, so they could only just, if they had a landing zone here, that's the only area they could use. What we're going to do is rectify that. The best way to do it is by using the blur tool. You can use any tool really, but it's just a case of blurring some of these edges to give people troops access. If I blur this area and this area and this area, it will give units access to the upper levels. So if I start blurring away like so. So basically what I'm doing is blurring areas where I want the units to be able to access the map from. But you get the general idea, and what I'll do is I'll leave it up to you really just to play around with this. Once you're happy with that, let's just do that. File, save, just do a save and come out of Photoshop for now. Okay, so back into GenEd, open up GenEd again, open up the map we were working on. So it's a multiplayer map, so it's going to be in data mission, multiplayer missions. It's test 2, open her up. You can see as you've opened it, we are still working in this little area, but we need to, as we've changed the map, the actual height map, we need to redo the environment so that the correct view is obtained. Go to light map, you can see light map shows a 3D top-down sort of view of your actual map, and where we've blurred the areas, they should now become accessible. So if we view this in the slope map, you can see here they've now turned an orangey colour. Let me just zoom in on the area. Right, that needs some more tweaking, as I need these to turn green or a lightish green, otherwise none of my ground units such as tanks and support units will be able to traverse this area at all. So if I come out of here, I'll meet you back at the other end. Okay, welcome back. As you can see, I've done some more tweaking in Photoshop so that these areas are now accessible by the armoured units and tanks and stuff like that, and support units. So they should be able to traverse these areas quite happily. Okay. Right. Now that I'm happy with this, the next thing we need to do is actually start putting some drop zones in for your teams and players. If you look on this right hand column, you have this in the scripts thing, there is the start. Now in single player games you can actually put this drop zone within the start menu, and that's not a problem. But because this is a multiplayer game, and for multiplayer it's best to have 3 or 4 different drop zones so that there's a random choice for your teams to land on, and it's not always the same. It sort of randomizes the game slightly and also keeps it fresh. So the way I do this is I create it in the scripts fields new, and if we just call this drop zone 1, you can double press the enter key. Drop zone 2, drop zone 3, and drop zone 4. Okay, so cancel that. So now what I've done is I've actually just created 4 drop zone here. So what I need to do now is start placing the drop zones. So if I go to the Special tab, click on Drop Zone, and if you look in the areas here, let me just view this through the height map. This is fairly flat and big, so is this area. So these areas, so anywhere along here we can actually put drop zones. I tend to work either in the slope view, slope map view, or height map view for a lot of this stuff. Texture we can't use at the moment because we haven't really put any texture down, and the light map, as I explained earlier, is a 3D representation, a top-down representation of the actual map we're using. As you can see in here, these areas that are slightly blurred are areas that I had to tweak in Photoshop to allow units to traverse from one end of the map to the other. Entirely up to you which view you use to do this, but I tend to go for this view for the time being. So what I need to do once I've selected my drop zone is right click anywhere on the map, left click insert. Let me zoom in slightly. You can change the properties of the drop zones either in the actions window or on the actual icon on the map itself. I will show you both ways. So if we right click on the icon here, you'll see these menus appear, and if you click edit object, this window appears. Now if we type in here team 1, as this is going to be team 1's drop zone, we need to change this from -1 to 0 for team 1. A -1 means that anybody can actually land on it, any team can land on it. And the designation for team 1 in a multiplayer game is a 0. Number, again, -1, it means indefinite number of drop zones are available. You can limit this to about 3 or 4, so after the 4th time or 3rd time it's used, that's it. No more drop zone is available. Position is self-explanatory. You've got X, Y, Z coordinates. Rotation we'll leave at 0 as it's pointing straight up, which is acceptable. So this is team 1's drop zone. What we need now to do is create one for team 2. So we come up here, right click, left click to insert object. Now this time we can edit it from this field. So we double click it again. It's the same window that appears. So we go Team 2. Click on the Teams tab. Change that -1 to 1 for Team 2. Number, leave as is. This, leave as it is. Rotation, we need it to point slightly down because we don't want them landing and facing the wall, basically, or facing the cliff. So what we can do here is change it to 180. So it'll be pointing straight south. There you go. So what we've basically done now in drop zone 1, we've created drop zones for teams 1 and teams 2. What we need to do now in drop zone 2 is go through the same process, but this time insert, and we can call this team 1. So 0, one more time, rotation 180. Okay, I'll stop the video for now, and I'll join you again once I've finished putting these drop zones on. Okay, welcome back. As you can see, I've placed all the various drop zones on the drop sites. Unfortunately, at this stage, these won't appear in-game until I've actually created another script to start them all off, which I've already done. So if you click on Start, you need to go into New, create a new trigger. Trigger of select, just name it whatever you want to call it. In this case, just random drop zone. Go to trigger type. The trigger type I've selected is random. And then go into the properties, you edit it. Probability is always set to 100. Because if you set it any lower than 100, the probability means that if you set it to 75%, there's 75% chance that these drop zones would appear. And as you can see from that, if in a multiplayer game, they should be appearing all the time. If they don't, you won't be able to get a game in session. Name objects, just basically select the drop zones that you want to be randomized, which we have here selected our 4 drop zones. Click OK. So just to recap quickly, what I did was in here create drop zones in the scripts, and within the drop zones I placed the actual entities themselves, or the actual objects, the drop zones themselves. And then to get these drop zones to appear in the game, I've randomized it to add variety and spice to the actual gameplay itself, so that the drop zones don't appear in the same spot all the time for players. Once this is done, and you may think that's it and we can go straight into ground control and play the game, you're wrong. Unfortunately, one of the biggest flaws of GenEd, which I've found, is that it doesn't create half the files that you need for it to play, and that's what I'm going to cover next. So if we come out of here, most importantly, save it first, come out. If you go into the actual mission folder itself, which we've called Test2, and open this up, originally in here there was only about 19 files. What I had to do was go into this folder. Now, if you recollect in my previous tutorial about GenEd files, I created that zip file for you to download and to use, and within that file there was a folder called MP files or something like that. Within that file, which I've renamed files to copy, there were these folders. Basically, in each folder you have all this, and all I've done is copy and pasted it into here and renamed it. Where it says name, I have put the name of, and this is just an example here. So this is going to be test. Oops. This is not case sensitive, so you're fine. I've renamed all these to the name of my actual map itself. Come out of there. Once you've done it, go into it, There's two important files that you need to change to start with. One is the team file. If you look at the team file, it's the description on the minimap that appears in the middle column when you enter the multiplayer side of ground control. Just basically tells you what that is: a deathmatch mission, terrain. I put the size in myself. I tend to put the how many dropships you can take with you, which is 2. The number of teams is 2, and the players is 2 to 8. This field is all this. It's a chain. You can put your own stuff in there, so you can write anything you want within reason anyway. So come out of that. There is also another one called test2 name, and it's a text file. In here you actually write the name of your map or what you want it to be seen as. This is the one that appears in the left hand column of ground control in the multiplayer option, so that we can straight away select it. This is going to be deathmatch test 2. Right, with all these files included, we're good to go. So here we go. So open up your session of ground control. Yep, let's select that one. So as we launch into the multiplayer side of it, select local area network game, create a game, click OK to that, select map. As you can see along here, you should be able to select deathmatch test 2, which is in your .tem or in your .text file. On the right hand side, deathmatch test 2. This is what was in your .tem file that we filled in. You can see this is a little representation of the map, but because we haven't put any texture in it yet, it's a pretty blank canvas. But let's just launch into this. So select the map first, click ready, and let's just launch. Here is the configuration where you can configure your units. We'll just skip this bit and just go straight into start. You get your loading screen. As you can see, the drop zone will automatically appear for your units to land. But if you look around you, the fog and environment has not been set. So this is you get a pretty harsh looking environment, and it's not very pleasing to the eye as such. Just take a few seconds to view around here what it actually looks like, and that looks bad with it trying to refresh. Okay, let's come out of this because we need to tweak a few things in the environmental file in the folders. So we just come out. Okay. This stage we don't really need to go back into GenEd at the moment because we can tweak everything from the text files that we have here. So we open up our folder that had our map in it. We go into this folder called test2.env, is your environment folder. If you open this up, let me come out of here, maximize this. You see along here, you've got your ambient color, your fog color, and your fog settings. This was pretty much the settings in your environmental drop-down menu in GenEd. You can actually alter all these from this screen, and it will change all the parameters and everything within GenEd as well. With the files that you downloaded from a previous tutorial of mine, there was a text file that I included called GC, Sky and Fog Settings. If we open this up, this is basically what it contains, and this is what those fog colors and ambient colors mean, and to which actual sky model they apply to. We can change this one. It says Sky Winter Day 2. We go, or Sky Winter Day LW. If we find that here, which is this one, it's the same one. You can actually change it to another sky if you didn't like this one, but we'll stick with this one for the time being. So the fog color for this is that. So we copy and we paste it up here to the fog color, and also the ambient color. Copy and just paste to here. What I also tend to do is tweak the sun elevation to give it a bit more. Let me just tweak this down to 30, and the shade fade I tend to pump up to about 50. That's fine, that's fine. Lens flare, if you want the sun, the image of the sun to be in your maps. At this stage I don't really want that. Cloud speed, we never set that in the original thing. We can set this to anything between 4 and 5 is fine. Playfield aspect ratio is 2400, which is a smallish map, and the texture default is default style. This is basically the camouflage colours that the Craven units have on their tanks and for the units, infantry units themselves. Okay, I'm happy with that. Well, not quite yet. Let me change the fog near and fog far. I tend to drill this down to 150. In fact, let's go down to 120. And the fog far, let's reduce this to 300. That's fine. File, save. You can also change the sun color here if you wanted to, entirely up to you, but I tend to leave it alone for now. Save it. Come out of there. Come out of there. Now we can launch go straight into ground control without having to go into the editor itself, and you can see the subtle changes that's happened. Let's go back to our game. So it's Deathmatch Test 2. I'll be doing another tutorial soon on the loading screen, so you can install your own loading screen. Now if you look here, that looks more pleasing to the eye rather than having those harsh, dark backgrounds and stuff. It looks better. We can tweak this some more so it looks better, or even change the sky if we want to. But for now, I'm happy with that. It looks fine. Okay, let's get out of here. Exit. Right, what we need to do now is open up our version of GenEd, and we need to put texture down on the actual map itself because it's looking a bit bare at the moment. So if we go into light map, I tend to work in this a lot when I'm applying texture. Let's select something. I think this one looks okay. I've got to warn you that at this stage, GenEd tends to crash a lot when you're applying texture. So it's a wise thing to save on constantly. I'm just roughly putting stuff down, but what I expect you to do when you have a little bit more time is do this yourself properly. Just select which ones you want to do. Just vary the textures, but don't go too mad. Don't want it to look too artificial. So save, keep saving. You can change the brush size from here. This goes as high as 64 and it goes as low as 2. Save. As you can see, I'm constantly saving because, like I've said before, ground control has a tendency to crash at the most unexpected times. That'll do for now. Maybe just add a little bit more to here. Save it. There you go. Now if you look into your texture map, you've got this appearing. Okay, now that we've saved it, do you want to save? Yes. Come out. Launch the game again. So Deathmatch Test 2. Wait for it to load. And there you go. As you can see, it's applied the texture. That looks a little more pleasing to the eye. If we were to land, because we put random drop zones, it's now set me up on somewhere else. Let's find a fast unit. Scouts are usually quite good. If we go up here, follow the scout. The only thing that's really now missing is props like trees and weeds and rocks that I will show you how to do in a minute. But if you recollect, we altered this and blurred some of the edges so that the units could actually go in and out of that, which is fine. It seems to be working. I may actually change the sky and the fog color because it still doesn't seem quite right at the moment. Let's come out of here. But you get the general idea of what it should start to look like anyway. So if we come out. Okay, next time we'll start populating this with props and everything, and I'll see you then. Ta-ta for now. Hi, welcome back. I've just suddenly realised something that I've done wrong, was that the sky that I used in GenEd was slightly different to the files for the fog color that I copied across. So what I'm going to do is I'll amend that now. If I open up my actual map, just go to the environmental file, take this off, snap this to that side, go to the files to the wrong one, go to this one. Now here I used the wrong fog color for the relevant sky. I used the desert one rather than the winter sky one. So what I need to do, winter day. It should be this one I should be using. So if I copy this one, copy, paste it. The ambient color, copy, paste this too. File, and save it. It should be okay now. Right. Let's just test it one more time to make sure it has taken on the settings. I'll go into ground control itself, open up. Just locate our map. As you can see with the textures and everything, it's also applied to textures on the little mini map that we have here, which is good. Click in. It actually looks better now, whereas, yep, that looks much better than before. Okay, I'm happy with that. I can come out and we can get on with actually putting props down. What I'll do, because this is such a small map, I'll do this, I'll install the actual props or lay them manually. On bigger maps, I would suggest we use PropGen for that, but like I said, there's going to be a separate tutorial on that one. Right. For putting props down, I tend to find that the height map view is a lot easier because you can gauge where your low ground is and your high ground and where it separates as well. So what I do, I will put down, I tend to use a limited amount of props, which is just basically desert weeds, maybe a few desert trees, some rocks. I may even include a skeleton in there, and that's basically about it. I don't try to populate too much props in my maps, as it can cause the actual game to lag slightly. But I think these days, because of the more powerful machines that we now have, it's so much easier to do so. Okay, let's put a stone in there. If I put a stone just around here, again, it's the same way that you place any entity on here, and you can edit it from here as well. What I tend to do with props is tick the random box so that they just randomly place themselves anywhere. Let's put one or two here, because otherwise if you don't press that, they're all going to face in the same direction virtually, and that's going to look so unnatural. Something to note that I remember reading about placing stones and rocks and stuff like that was that to have them near the base of hills or mountains, as that's where they normally are deposited in real life, in nature. But again, I leave that to your discretion. Entirely up to you where you want to place them. Something that looks pleasing. Make sure, especially with these large rocks, that you don't put them in a place that is narrow and prevent actual units from passing through them, because you'll start making a natural barrier and that won't be really good at all. So let's put another couple in here. Put some little stones around here. Okay, I'm going to stop it. I'm going to pause here for a minute and you can join me once I've completed this. Okay, welcome back. As you can see from here, I've already started to place props all over the place. Let me just come out of here. Let me just save this. Let me just zoom out so you can see better. As you can see, these are props I've been placing. It's important that you actually also place props outside of the actual playing area so that it looks like it continues out here. Because in nature, rocks and stones and trees and weeds don't stop right on the border. They carry on. So just to give that sort of feel and realistic look to it. Once you've done this, you can save it. Again, what I suggest you do is you take your time in doing this and placing it, and this can take quite a long, lengthy process. So if we come out of here and go into the actual game itself, so we're going to test 2. Start the game. There you go. As you can see, I've scattered the props about, trying to keep it sort of natural looking if you can. Putting weeds down. The good thing with the weeds is you can actually put mines and demo charges there without the opposition seeing it, unless they actually pay close attention to this area. I tend to put weeds and stuff along passageways and things like that. So here we go. Props here, dinosaur bones, some big desert stones. And up here, of course, there's my call sign, the saber-tooth's head, or skeleton head, cranium. Okay, and that about wraps it up, really. The troops have landed, ready to take on battle. Okay, thank you for watching. It's been one of those experiences. If you have any questions or want me to cover anything else with multiplayer maps, just comment me or send me an email and I'll respond and try and help you out. But as you can see, I've continued the props outside the actual game area, so it looks as though it's actually part of the actual game itself, even though I can't access some of these parts. But it's there. And that's it. So come out. There we have it. You've now created your first multiplayer map for ground control using the editor GenEd. So you know what files you need to actually create the maps and to make them work within ground control. I've briefly touched on how to set things up, what textures, how you apply textures and stuff like that. My next couple of tutorials will be about the little tricks that I use, how and why I place things the way they are, and the way I generally create my own maps. So I hope you're there for the next one. Thank you for watching.